In medieval Europe, heating fuel was scarce, expensive, and labour-intensive. Firewood had to be cut, dried, hauled, and guarded. Most homes could not afford to heat entire rooms through the night, yet people still survived long winters without modern insulation or central heating. One of the most effective solutions was architectural rather than technological. The medieval bedloft was not a matter of status or comfort alone. It was a deliberate thermal strategy that exploited how heat behaves inside enclosed spaces. Today, that same principle can reduce heating costs in modern homes when applied correctly. Understanding this trick begins with abandoning the idea that medieval people were ignorant of physics. They lived with it every day. So, heat rises. You know, medieval builders understood this through observation long before formal science described it. In those one-room houses, the hearth sat at floor level, but sleeping platforms were raised high above it. Warm air from the fire would, quite naturally, accumulate near the ceiling, making those elevated sleeping areas significantly warmer than the floor below. This was not accidental. Ceilings were kept low to trap heat. Lofted beds sat above the coldest air layer, often close to roof beams where warmth lingered longest after the fire died down. Sleeping higher reduced exposure to drafts and ground cold simultaneously. Why the bedloft was about heat conservation, not luxury. The bedloft allowed a household to heat a smaller volume of air instead of, an entire room. Curtains, wooden railings, or plank walls often enclosed the sleeping area, creating a microclimate that stayed warm for hours longer than the rest of the house. Rather than burning fuel all night, families would bank the fire, climb into the loft, and just rely on the heat that was already there. This reduced wood consumption dramatically over a winter season. Fuel saved meant survival extended. So, you see, many medieval loft beds were partially enclosed with fabric hangings or wooden panels. These acted, quite cleverly, as early insulation by slowing air movement. And, well, the body's own heat further warmed the confined space. Now, this wasn't suffocating or dangerous because the materials were breathable, and importantly, fires were not burning at night. The enclosure retained warmth, without trapping smoke. The principle was containment, not confinement. Sleeping at floor level really put folks at a disadvantage in pre-modern homes. Cold air, well, it tends to pool near the ground. In those old medieval houses with dirt or stone floors, the chill would just seep up all the time. Drafts would sneak in through doors, cracks and shutters, making it even colder down there. Sleeping on the floor meant you were always losing heat, both through conduction, straight into the ground, and through convection as the cold air moved around you. By elevating the bed, families removed themselves from the coldest air layer. This alone could mean several degrees of difference through the night. In energy terms, elevation was insulation. How modern homes recreate medieval inefficiencies unintentionally. Modern heating systems warm entire rooms uniformly, even though occupants use only a fraction of the space. Bedrooms are often heated from floor to ceiling, wasting energy where no one benefits. Sleeping at floor level in a large room, well, it forces heating systems to compensate for stratified air that people never actually use. Medieval design, you see focused heat where bodies actually were. So let's talk about how the medieval bed loft principle applies today in practical terms. Modern homes can replicate this effect without rebuilding architecture. Raising the sleeping surface even modestly reduces exposure to cold air. Platform beds, loft beds, or elevated frames, all improve thermal comfort. More importantly, reducing the volume of heated air around the sleeper matters. Canopies, heavy curtains, or even ceiling-mounted fabric panels, well, they create smaller, warm zones. These retain body heat and allow thermostats to be set lower overnight. Lowering nighttime heating by even just a few degrees, well, it actually yields measurable savings. Why canopy beds? They really weren't just decorative inventions. Canopy beds persisted long after medieval times because, quite simply, they worked. Those heavy drapes blocked drafts and trapped warmth. In uninsulated houses, this was absolutely essential. Modern versions, using breathable fabrics, actually achieve similar results. The goal here is slowing air movement, not sealing the sleeper. This is ancient thermal logic, really, just wearing decorative clothing. How modern insulation and lofting work together rather than, competing. Well, insulated homes benefit even more from this approach. When heat loss through walls is reduced, internal heat stratification becomes more noticeable. Elevated sleeping zones exploit this naturally. Instead of fighting physics with constant heating, medieval logic works with it. Efficiency improves, without mechanical complexity. So, why does this approach, improve comfort as well as cost? People often overheat rooms just because beds feel cold. Elevation and enclosure really address the real problem directly. Warm sleepers require less ambient heat. Comfort improves, even as energy use drops. Medieval builders, they solved human problems first, not engineering ones. So, what limits this method, and how did medieval people address them? Ventilation still mattered, Medieval lofts were open enough to allow airflow and prevent stale air. Fires were extinguished before sleep to avoid smoke build-up. Modern users should, follow the same logic. Breathable materials, safe clearances and smoke detectors are honestly essential. Old wisdom assumed responsibility. Why this trick survived for centuries. The medieval bed loft endured because it worked consistently under harsh conditions. It required no fuel, no tools, and, well, no maintenance beyond basic carpentry and cloth. That reliability made it universal. Today's rising energy costs make that logic relevant again. So, what this teaches about historical intelligence is quite fascinating, really. It shows us how people in the past used their knowledge and experience to navigate the world around them, often in ways we might not expect today. Medieval people, they optimized their environment using observation restraint and practicality. It's a reminder that even centuries ago, folks were finding clever ways to make the most of what they had. The bedloft was not primitive, it was efficient. Modern technology often forgets efficiency in pursuit of convenience. History remembers what works. If you value serious historical insight that still saves energy and improves daily life, support Echoes of Valor. Subscribe to the channel, share this guide with fellow history and preparedness enthusiasts, and help keep practical knowledge alive that once kept entire households warm through winter without waste.